There has been a lot of debate if Carmelo Anthony's number should be retired in Madison Square Garden, and Chris and I are here to break it all down. All that and much more on the Knicks Digest. What's up, guys? It's your boy Dariel and Chris. And Chris, we finally have a dedicated video talking about your boy Melo. Now, if you've been following the Knicks Digest YouTube channel, the videos that we've been putting out, Chris and I, every once in a while, we get into like a small little banter regarding Melo, but we can never really fully get into it because the video is about Jalen Brunson or the Knicks in general, so we always have to put that on the back burner. But here we are. Oh, in one of our more recent videos, you mentioned how Carmelo Anthony is the reason why you fell in love with basketball. So I kind of wanted you just to tell me your relationship with Melo and why he was the one that made you fall in love with basketball.
I knew who Melo was because I didn't know a ton about basketball, but I knew who the best players in basketball were. And Melo was one of the best players in the NBA. He gets traded to the Knicks, and I remember watching the game against the Bucks. I remember the intro, the I'm coming home thing. And
even though he grew up in Baltimore, but whatever.
Okay. He grew up in New York from age 0 to 12 and then moved to Baltimore at 12 years old when his mom got a new job because she couldn't sustain living in the projects of Red Hook as a single mother with 3 kids while working as a cleaning lady.
Way to make it sad, but whatever.
All I'm saying is single mom, she did what she could. They moved to the DMV after. It's why Melo can kind of rep both. Growing up, Melo wanted to be Bernard King, and then he got his chance, gets traded to the New York Knicks. From there on, I started really locking in and watching basketball because I loved Carmelo from the second he got there. I thought he was awesome, and it was the first time I ever really knew an NBA great who went to the New York Knicks.
My relationship with Melo is completely different than yours. So I was I was like a junior in college. And we were in the middle of practice, and then we were about to start practice, and then all of a sudden we see the TV, and there's like the bottom line on Sports Center, and it says Carmelo Anthony traded to the Knicks, and everybody was like, "What?" At that time, Melo, like you said, he was one of the better players in the league. Everybody knew that. Offensively, he was a bucket. It was he's so underrated as far as offensively. In my opinion, he's one of the best offensive players I've ever seen in my life. The jab step, the mid range, the 3-point, the post up, the bully ball, everything, the handles. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But when he got traded to New York, I was a little weary because one, he could have waited until the offseason to sign with the Knicks as a free agent, I believe. What he ended up doing, he ended up forcing the Knicks' hand, and I believe at the time Donnie Walsh was the general manager, and he pretty much he made Donnie Walsh make the trade. And speaking of the trade, I have it right here. Who did the Knicks give up? So the Knicks gave up Wilson Chandler, Danilo Gallinari, Timothy Mozgov, Raymond Felton. They were the starting 5. I'm pretty sure they were the 4 out of the starting 5 besides Amari. Amari was the 4, Timothy was the 5, Raymond the 1, Wilson the 2, and Wilson the 2 and Danilo Gallinari at the 3 maybe. We also gave up the 2012 38th pick, the 2013 51 pick, the 2014 number 12 pick, the 2016 pick swap. And the picks, the 2012 38 pick ended up being Quincy Miller, so nothing too crazy there. The 2013 51 pick, we ended up being Romeo Osby, so nothing crazy there.
Yeah, get him.
Yeah, the 2014 number 12 pick ended up being Dario Saric. Interesting pick. And who did the Knicks receive in that trade? Obviously, the headliner is Carmelo Anthony. We also picked
Billups.
Billups, which was a huge pickup. Billups at that time.
Anthony Carter.
Exactly. Anthony Carter, Sheldon Williams, Ronaldo Bachman. So having said all that, he gets traded to the Knicks. Now the Knicks fans, we're all going crazy because we're expecting to go to the Eastern Conference Finals, go into the finals, when at that time the Miami Big Three was formed, Chris Bosh, LeBron, and D-Wade. And we were just like, we were so just arrogant and just dumb, thinking that we had a chance. But speaking of that season, so the season he got traded to the Knicks in 2011, they lost in 4 games to Boston. What were Melo's numbers? I have it right here in front of me. Melo averaged 26 points, 10.3 rebounds, and 4.8 assists. I just never really had the confidence in Melo because Melo's game is so one-dimensional, bro. You never really heard about people talking about Melo's defensive game. You never really heard about Melo being the leader in the locker room, trying to galvanize his teammates. It was literally like the way Melo's gonna affect the game is he's going to put the ball in the bucket. That's how he impacts the game. The way he gets his points. But at a certain point, I'm just like, yo. At the time, you were definitely top 10 player in the league. And for me personally, if we're getting a top 10 player in the league, I want you to be more than one-dimensional. I want you to be able to affect the game in more than one ways. And with Melo, he never developed the rest of his game. His game was completely offense. To me, I never really saw him take that initiative of being like, you know what? I want to be on the all-defensive team this season. I want to be the defensive player of the year this season. Defensive player of the year might be a little bit of a stretch. But, like, I never really heard him talk about, like, upping his defensive part of the game. It was strictly just points with Melo.
The Knicks didn't give Melo the chance to be a defender when you're giving him nothing on offense. I understand, like most NBA trades in history, the year that you make a blockbuster trade, you're not going to go very far because you just depleted your entire roster.
Right.
That is not alone with Carmelo. That is every time you make a trade for a star player, your roster is way less deep, it's way more depleted, and that is just how basketball goes. Now, as far as Melo being one-dimensional, he's one-dimensional if you're saying there's two dimensions in basketball, being offense and defense. Carmelo Anthony was a fine passer, and as you mentioned, he had 4.8 assists in that playoff series. He was the only player that playoff series on the New York Knicks to get double-digit assists. He was the only one who got double-digit assists in that Knicks-Celtics playoff series. He had 19. The next highest was Tony Douglas, who had 9. Tony Douglas played a lot of minutes that series as the Knicks point guard. He played the second most minutes or the third most minutes on the team. Landry Fields forgot how to play basketball that entire series. I did not know this. I don't remember watching that series. I probably did, but I was 10 years old, so I couldn't tell you. But Landry Fields didn't make a single three. He only shot 4 of them, which is a problem when you're Landry Fields and you're there to play defense and shoot threes. The only person who could score the ball that series on the Knicks at all at an effective rate was Carmelo. Amari didn't. Amari averaged 14 points per game that playoff series.
That's crazy. But see, this is what I'm saying about Melo, man. I get it. You're an offensive player. But I never really saw him try, and maybe he did it behind the scenes. Obviously, I'm not in the locker room. I don't know. But I never really saw him try to really fit with Amari. He came to Amari's team, and as soon as he got to the team, everything revolved around Melo. Melo averaged... Better. But Amari played all 4 games, which is astonishing to me because I thought he was like in and out because he had back problems. But I think that was another Boston Celtics series. But yeah, he's a better player offensively. But why couldn't Melo sacrifice his game a little bit to get Amari going? And it seems like
because Amari wasn't as good. It's the same thing as saying, well, maybe Brunson should shoot less so Randall can score more in the playoffs. The prior year to Melo going to the New York Knicks, he, I believe, was in the conference. I'm not sure if that was 2009, 2010. I'll be honest. I have no idea.
No, yeah, it was.
2010?
It was 2009 into 2010. Yeah, they went to the Western Conference Finals against Kobe.
Okay, so that
roster was perfect for Melo. All Melo had to do was think about offense. It was Chauncey, it was Kenyon Martin, it was J.R. Smith, it was Nene, it was Dante Jones, it was Anthony Carter, it was Ronaldo Balkman. Maybe not Ronaldo Balkman. I'm confusing him with someone else.
Timberwolves.
Okay, so like literally all Melo had to do was score, which is why that season they had the deepest run in however long, and they went up against Kobe and they lost in 6, I believe.
If Melo was already going to the conference finals, and yes, as we just said, the Nuggets were good. You can't make an argument that Nuggets team was not only a perfectly constructed team around their star, because the Nuggets were good at what they were doing, they were also just talented. They had talent on that roster. They weren't that Lakers team.
That was one of, if not the only time I saw Melo take the challenge, bro.
He guarded LeBron every playoff series that they played against each other, which Was that one?
You have to. It's like the Allen Iverson and the Isaiah Thomas reference that I threw at you in one of the videos that we just recorded.
Yeah.
You need to have the perfect team around Melo in order for him to really, really use his powers, if you will. And his powers is putting the ball in the bucket. And that's what I don't like about my players. You're on the New York Knicks team. You're a top 10 player. At that time, he was maybe even top 5. And the only way you can impact the team is scoring. I want a little bit more from my player. I want you to score. I want you to play defense. I want you to be a little bit of a shot creator as far as like getting your teammates better. And I know that's asking a lot, but that's always been my gripe with Melo. He's so one-dimensional that it's like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, you're a great offensive player, but like, why couldn't you? And the talent around him, I know it's not all his fault, but I would have liked to see him. I don't know. Maybe I don't know, man. I feel like when I'm saying it out loud, I might be asking a little bit too much of him. But then I'm also thinking is like, no, he was the best player on our team. Anytime you have a best player, anytime you have a talent of Melo, you should be demanding the most out of him. You should be trying to squeeze as much talent out of him as possible. And I just feel like his Knicks tenure, we absolutely did not do that.
You could break Melo's 7 years up into a pretty good split. The first 3 years, really 2.5, whatever, when they made the playoffs, then 2013 to 14 and through 2016-17. I think that's the best way to talk about this. There's pre and then post Phil Jackson.
Okay.
And there was a vast difference between the New York Knicks with Phil Jackson and without Phil Jackson. I mean, as we've talked about this a little bit very recently, Donnie Walsh was kind of at the end of his rope, holding a job in the NBA due to health concerns.
Right.
And basically left the New York Knicks. The Knicks fired Glenn Grunwald. They bring in Steve Mills, who throughout his entire... Here's how Steve Mills' career worked. He was with the Knicks up until the 2010-2011 season, the one where they traded for Melo and Amari's good year with the Knicks, the one of the 4 or 5. Steve Mills was not there. That was his first year not as part of the New York Knicks staff since around 2004 or something. Steve Mills comes back in the summer of 2013. Knicks start missing the playoffs again. They also, same time that they bring in Phil Jackson. The Knicks go from a team that is deep, has shooting, has defense. I understand Tyson Chandler got injured in 2014 anyway. He missed a ton of time with injuries. Amari was at that point averaging 11.5 points per game. And they really didn't have a second best. It was J.R. Smith, but 14.5 points a game is your second best player. Yeah, the team's not making the playoffs. Melo was averaging 24 points, 24.7 to be exact. And what happened was he was alone ever since Phil Jackson went to the Knicks, because what Phil Jackson did is say, let's take our most valuable veteran on this team in Marcus Camby. Let's take the best shooter on this roster in Steve Novak. Let's take the pick swap that is later used in a trade to bring Kawhi Leonard to the Toronto Raptors, shout out Ben, which won them an NBA Finals in Jakob Poeltl for Bargnani.
Bargnani.
Beginning of the end. Because Bargnani sucks. He sucks.
The Phil Jackson era, I can't defend. The Phil Jackson era was horrible. And what's so interesting is that I remember right before James Dolan hired Phil Jackson, there was people outside the Garden protesting. They had signs and they were like, "You better do something because the Knicks they just been sorry." And then we get Phil Jackson, and everybody's like, yo, Phil Jackson, this is going to be amazing. This guy has 11 titles. This guy can coach talent. But again, he was going to be the general manager. He was going to be the coach. But as far as Knicks fans, that still was fine. We were still like, yo, as far as if he's going to be part of the organization, he's going to inject winning into the organization.
We were hyped.
Exactly. Everybody was hyped. Everybody was hyped. And then
I remember that. I remember being excited. I'm not going to act like I saw this coming. Of course I didn't.
And then he started getting rid of JR, Iman, like you said, Marcus Camby, Tyson. We're like, what the hell is he doing?
Yeah, he traded everyone.
He traded absolutely everyone, and it was the season right after they went to the Eastern Conference semis against Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, so it was a slow progression, whereas first they did the Connie trade because, Phil Jackson's an idiot. Then they go that season. James Dolan got way too involved in the New York Knicks, which, as we've said before, one of the reasons why Leon Rose is so awesome is because he is not letting James Dolan do anything with this New York Knicks team. Now, I don't know if that's something Leon said, look, dude, we have this common denominator, which is Carmelo Anthony, since Dolan and Leon both very close with Melo. Leon is former agent. Dolan and Melo have been tight ever since Melo was a Knick. And Leon maybe told him, you can't get involved, or I'm not doing this, and you know that I'm going to do this correctly. Or Dolan's just focused on the Sphere because the Sphere is going to make him a ton of money. I don't know which one it is. I don't care. Dolan's not involved with the Knicks, and for the first time, even past the Melo years, because the Melo years had their own dysfunctionality ever since he got there, Dolan hired a consulting firm that didn't know the first thing about basketball to help run the Knicks, and they were just showing up on like the planes and stuff. Cole Aldridge said it was like the weirdest thing ever. He's like, I didn't know how they were supposed to help us. It was probably pissing Melo off. The Knicks were doing really weird things that 2013-14 season, so the Knicks suck in 2013-14 because Dolan gets involved. Melo carried them that year. Then we bring in Phil, and Phil loses his mind, does the Bargnani trade, to exactly quote Stephen A. Smith, we traded Raymond Felton and Tyson Chandler away for a box of cookies. Halfway through the season, the Knicks were trying to make a move, trading Iman Shumpert from the team. And then according to sources, and by sources I mean half-drunk LeBron in a press conference after they won the finals, he was talking about how he was obviously involved in the front office because he's the GM. He said the Knicks, when they were talking, he's like, yeah, so we're going to get Shumpert, and then the Knicks said they're going to throw in J.R. Smith. And LeBron, like, in the moment, because we know LeBron loves the spotlight, was like, you're going to throw in J.R. Smith. Okay, that's cool with me. Just like being LeBron in every sense of the word. I don't see how this can be pinned on Melo that the Knicks sucked for half of his tenure.
No. I'm not pinning the second half, the Phil Jackson years. I'm not 100% pinning it on Melo. And if anything, it's like 80, it's like 90-10, 10% Melo. The only thing you can probably say that Phil Jackson did right, but you can even have an argument about that, is drafting Kristaps. So when Kristaps came into the league and with the Knicks, it was Melo, Kristaps. You had Lance Thomas, Sasha Vujic, Derek Fisher, Jeff Hornacek as coaches. Like, I get it. But I don't know, man. It's just the first half. Now I'm specifically talking about the first half of Melo's tenure, when we were making at least playoff appearances, and we only made one really strong playoff appearances. I'm gonna keep saying what I've been saying, man. I just wanted more of Melo. Now earlier I did talk about when they went to the playoff season, when he went to the playoffs, the season that Melo got to the Knicks. Now the season after, again, they lost in the first round, and that was when they played the Miami Heat. They lost in 5 games. That's the only time that I'm pretty sure that Melo played LeBron in the playoffs. He ended up averaging 27.8, 8.2 rebounds, and 2.2 assists. That was a series where Amari, after, I don't know, maybe game 4, he in the locker room, he slammed the fire extinguisher, and I remember seeing the report, and he was like an inch away from like damaging a nerve in his hand or something. I was like,
yeah.
Great, Maury. Cool. So the season after, that was when we went to the second round against the Indiana Pacers. But in the first round, we ended up beating Boston in 6 games. Melo averaged 30 points, 5.3 rebounds, and 1.8 assists. In the second round against Indiana, we lost in 6 games. Melo averaged 28.5 points, 7.8 rebounds, and 1.3 assists. So basically, remember how you said earlier where like in the very first playoff series against the Boston Celtics where they got swept, he ended up averaging 5 assists. The rest of the playoff outings that he had, he averaged 2 assists, he averaged 2 assists, and he averaged 1.3 assists.
So he averaged 30 points. And they had Jason Kidd and Raymond Felton. And they were a Mike Woodson team. Mike Woodson was trying to get the ball into Melo's hand. The Knicks were the first team that were doing pace and space, shoot a bunch of threes basketball. That was when that started through Mike Woodson's perimeter-centric offense. The ball was in Melo's hands, so Melo could do what he did best.
Which is the only thing he did best.
We know that he was guarding Paul George that series. We know that he guarded LeBron the series before. He was always guarding the best player in every other team.
He also had like a mini shoulder injury. I remember he was wearing like a sleeve.
Mini. He tore the labrum in his shoulder.
Did he?
Yeah.
I did not. I don't remember that. That's crazy.
Yeah, dude. His shoulder was destroyed.
What I want to get into now is I actually want to get into where does Melo rank within the Knicks organization history. And the only graphic that I have are points because I don't think you're really gonna bring up rebounds and assists and everything else with Melo. Is that fair to say? We should just focus on the points.
I mean, he's probably somewhere on the rebound list for the years, but you know.
So as far as the amount of points that he scored as a Knick, he is number 7 right now with 10,186 points. The players that are ahead of him, we got Richie Guerin, Carl Braun, Allen Houston, which completely shocked me. Willis Reed, Walt Frazier, and number 1 being Patrick Ewing with 23,665 points. So then there's that. He's number 7. As far as his number being raised in the Garden, man, I don't think he did enough, bro. I don't think he did enough with the Knicks. And it's not even just about being 7th in the all-time scoring list. It's just, again, I'm taking into account what did he do as far as being the best player on the team. He went past the first round once as a Knick. So I know we're kind of going over and over and over the same thing over about how he didn't have enough talent, and then Phil Jackson came and he completely just gutted the team. I'm just super underwhelmed with Melo's Knick tenure.
From 2004 to 2020, the Knicks made the playoffs, what, 3-4 times?
2004 to 2020.
They made it once with like Crawford and them as an 8th seed, right?
The year that Stephon Marbury got traded to the Knicks, was that 2004? I don't remember the year, but yeah, they made it to the playoffs and they got swept.
One of those years.
They got swept in the first round by the Nets. So okay, yes, we can include that.
Oh yes, they absolutely did.
Yeah.
Gross.
And then 2011, they made it with Melo. 2012, they made it with Melo. And 2013, right?
Yeah. So let's put it that way. He's the only player through Patrick Ewing to Jalen Brunson. Patrick Ewing is higher up on the all-time Knicks list than Melo, obviously. I don't think there's an argument for that. If you rationalize it, he's the only player who came into New York as a true superstar celebrity and said, yo, I got it, and then brought the Knicks consistently to the playoffs for a few years. The only person who's even brought the Knicks to the playoffs since the first time he got here was Brunson. And Brunson has a chance to be the greatest Knick of all time if he can win the Knicks a championship in the modern era, because the Knicks don't have a ring when there's been a three-pointer in the NBA. There were no threes back when the Knicks won their last finals. Three-pointer came into play in the 1979-1980 NBA season. Knicks' last ring is 73.
73.
So the Knicks have never won in the modern era. Brunson can become the greatest Knick of all time.
Facts.
Melo also could have and did not. And that is a fair knock on Carmelo Anthony. He could have. Things did not go his way with the way the franchise was ran. I'm not saying that Melo has 0% blame. Everyone has to deserve some blame for a lack of success on a basketball team. It doesn't matter if you're LeBron James in the times that they missed the playoffs. It doesn't matter if you're the front office. Everyone is partially at fault. Melo has been the only player to come into the Knicks and actually change things outside of the Randall Brunson era. And those two come in they're like a package deal almost right now.
Listen, you said that Melo was a superstar when he came to the Knicks.
Absolutely.
We could get very semantic-y. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily call him a superstar. I would definitely call him an all-star, but I don't know if I would call him a superstar when he came to the Knicks. A superstar? He
was an NBA all-star starter every single year he played with the Knicks, except for maybe one. He started every single all-star game that he made with the Knicks, except for maybe one.
Yeah, but that to me doesn't make you a superstar just because you started in all-star games. To me, what makes you a superstar is how you are able to affect the game. And Melo was only able to affect the game on literally one aspect of the game. LeBron,
and it made the Knicks a successful franchise. Whereas if they didn't trade for Melo, all that would have happened is they would have been clowned for Amari, tried to rebuild, failed, and not to get well, technically then maybe they wouldn't have gotten Brunson. Who the hell knows? It was 10 years ago, so we can't say that. But They probably would have gotten Brunson anyway, let's be real. But the Knicks would have just sucked instead, and they never would have improved because what we're looking at is drafts with Amari. So the Knicks are mid in 2011. That's where they end. They end at mid. 2012, they probably still end being mid, but they missed the playoffs because Amari, woke up and forgot how to play basketball. They would have just had to rebuild. And I don't really know if it would have worked because the 2012 draft was so weird. Like, Anthony Davis was great, and then everyone picked after him was awful. Like, it was just constant misses. 2013, the best player in it is one of the greatest players of all time in Giannis. And outside of that, Victor Oladipo had a moment. CJ McCollum has been a solid NBA player. So we have Melo. We make the playoffs for 3 years. The next 4, we miss him. But it's not like we would have been better without him. We still would have sucked. The difference is we would have been unwatchable. Melo made us watchable. He made people tune into Knicks games. He gave the Knicks hope. In 2016, there was a report that came out, I don't know, 5 years later or something, a few years back now, that, wow, Porzingis has almost been in the league 10 years. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
But there was a report that the Knicks probably could have traded that 4th overall pick for DeMarcus Cousins, and they didn't. Why? Because Phil Jackson's nuts. That would have changed everything for the New York Knicks franchise, and they didn't do it because of poor management. The Knicks would have had poor management whether Melo was there or not. We would have sucked whether Melo was here or not. What Melo did was he gave us a chance. And
at what? At losing in the first round every single season besides one season?
Yeah, but what else would have happened? Like, realistically, what's the other option? Was Melo supposed to be like, okay, let me, Jason Kidd's 39, take over, bro? Like, Amari, your knees don't work. Give me more than 10 points for a change. Tyson Chandler's
I get it, man. Like,
play offense.
Melo to me is so like it's I can't like ignore those facts. I can't ignore that Phil Jackson was a horrible GM. I can't ignore that the best team he had with him were a bunch of dads. Jason Kidd, Marcus Camby, Kurt Thomas. Like, all these players are just older they're so old. So, yeah. But man, I just can't get over the fact that Melo being a top 10 player when he was in the first half of the Knicks tenure, like, I just can't get over the fact that, like, yo, Melo, you could have done more, bro, besides scoring, man. Like, why didn't you take the initiative to do a little bit more, to try and just up your defensive game, to try and work on your leadership skills. Like, like I said in the beginning of this pod, I never really heard about Melo trying to develop more leadership skills, reading books about leadership, or just trying to galvanize the teammates. And I'm not trying to compare him to LeBron, because nobody's ever going to be like LeBron ever again. We will never see him. But LeBron is, as much as we look at LeBron for being the player with the most points in NBA history, which is insane, he's actually not a scorer. He's actually a facilitator. That's what he's best at first. And then he's better. And then he added to his game scoring. And then he added to his game posting up. And then he added his game a three-point shot. Like, that's what I'm saying. LeBron, as his career grew, as his career got deeper and deeper, like, he added more things to his game. What can you say about Melo that he added to his game since he got into the league?
In the 2015-16 season, when Carmelo Anthony was coming off of a torn patellar tendon in his knee from the year prior, when the Knicks played really well and got a whole 17 wins. Shout out Alexis Fed, tank commander. And the next summer, a bunch of Knicks were posting on their story, because I had no life in high school, so I just followed all the Knicks on social media.
Nice.
They were all posting something when they went away on a weekend vacation, organized by none other than team captain Carmelo Anthony. And there was a hashtag going around between Melo, Lance Thomas, I think Lou Odmanson posted it, Aaron Afwalo. It called a very Melo weekend, because Melo took them all and worked with them. This was it was just 1 year into his contract extension, and he tried to be a better leader. Unfortunately, the second leading scorer on that team was Porzingis, who was a rookie and weighed less than I do now.
So you're giving me one example of when Melo took the leadership initiative?
I'm giving you an example of when Melo took over before the season started and was a leader It's
for
not
one
his
season.
fault the team sucked.
For one
Maybe if
season?
the team was good, we would have seen him lead better. But he had Aaron Afualo, who just wanted to take turnaround jump shots and in clutch situations where he missed every single clutch shot he took.
Before we wrap up this episode, I do have one more graphic for you. So, the prior graphic was just all-time points as a Knick. And Melo was 7th on that list. But this graphic right in front of us is actually the highest points per game average as a Knick. So, Melo comes in at number 4 because this graphic actually has Jalen Brunson, which is crazy. So, I'm actually going to take Jalen Brunson out. So, Melo is actually number 3 with 24.7. And then Bernard-Kin is number 2 at 26.5. And do you know who number 1 is? So this guy actually played for the Knicks for, I believe, a couple seasons, maybe 2 or 3.
Is it Bob McAdoo?
Bob McAdoo, 26.7. All right, guys. So we have come to the end to the Melo debate. Should Melo get his number retired in the Garden? I'm on the side of saying no. Chris obviously is on the side of saying hell yes. But we want to hear from you guys. Leave it in the comments. Do you think Melo's number should be retired in the Garden? Let us know. And also let us know what you guys thought about Melo's tenure with the Knicks. Were you expecting more? Were you super disappointed? Whatever you want to say. We'll definitely reach out to you guys. But until next time, guys, you guys know the deal. You guys know the drill. Taj Gibson for president. Jalen Brunson for MVP. And we out. Knicks, baby. Peace.